It started with the sound of rain tapping against the windshield, like fingers drumming an old secret. Detective Ryan Hale sat alone in his car, engine off, lights dimmed, watching the empty street outside the crime scene. The radio whispered static, and beneath it, the city breathed slow, restless, wounded. Another girl gone. Another set of strange, precise carvings that spoke of ritual rather than rage. Hale had seen monsters before, but this one felt different. The details were too deliberate, too intimate. He felt as though the killer wasn't hiding at all, he was performing, leaving a stage for Hale to find. And somehow, Hale knew the show was meant for him. He lit a cigarette, the ember reflecting in his weary eyes, and whispered to the night, "What are you trying to tell me?" The rain answered with silence. By dawn, the storm had eased, but the city still wore its wounds. Inside the precinct, the walls hummed with fluorescent fatigue and the scent of stale coffee. Hale stood over a pinboard littered with photos, faces of victims, maps of alleyways, the same set of carvings repeating like a curse. Each mark a spiral etched in blood, precisely centered over the heart. His partner once called it the killer's signature. Hale saw something else, a pattern of movement, a sequence, a rhythm he almost recognized. He traced the lines on the board with a trembling finger, the quiet realization dawning that the killer wasn't choosing victims at random. He was composing something. And Hale, unwillingly, was learning the melody. Behind him, Captain Ward's voice broke the silence. "Go home, Hale. You're starting to look like them." He didn't answer. The envelope arrived that afternoon, unmarked, slipped through the precinct's front slot like a whisper. In City, one photograph. A woman's face, half in shadow, eyes closed. Beneath her collarbone, the same spiral symbol carved with surgical precision. Hale's breath caught as he flipped it over. 3 words scrawled in crimson ink. "You're late again." His heart hammered against his ribs. The killer wasn't just mocking the department, he was speaking directly to him. As he stared, the hum of the precinct seemed to fade, replaced by a deeper sound, one that came from somewhere inside his skull. He realized with a chill that this wasn't the killer's first message. It was just the first one everyone could see. Sleep came like a thief, and with it the dream. Hale stood in a field of static fog, his boots sinking into black soil. Somewhere in the distance, a child's laughter echoed soft, familiar. He followed it through the mist until he saw the boy, young, pale, with the same eyes he once had. The boy pointed towards something in the darkness, whispering, "He knows your name." Hale turned, but the fog shifted, forming shapes, faces of the dead, eyes opening wide as if waking from water. When he jolted awake, his chest was damp with sweat, and his heart pounded a rhythm he recognized from the case notes. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats again. Somewhere, deep down, he knew the killer wasn't just reaching out, he was inside his dreams now. Back at his apartment, Hale sat at his kitchen table surrounded by silence. The rain outside had turned to sleet, ticking softly against the window. On the table sat the old cassette recorder he used for field notes, still stained from the last crime scene. He pressed play. At first static, then the faint sound of footsteps, his own voice muttering an old entry. Then, beneath it, another voice, low, deliberate, whispering his name. He froze. The recorder clicked off by itself, as if commanded. For a long moment, he stared at it, unable to breathe. The city outside seemed to listen with him, and in that pause, he understood something he could never say aloud. The killer wasn't chasing him. He was leading him somewhere. The next clue led Hale to the abandoned textile factory at the edge of the city, a relic from another century now reclaimed by rust and silence. He moved through the darkness with his flashlight trembling against healing walls, his every step echoing through hollow corridors. Dust hung in the beam like ash, and somewhere deep within, a dripping pipe kept time like a metronome. The killer had been here, Hale could feel it, the same way prey feels the shadow before the strike. On a cracked pillar, He found the symbol again, carved with methodical care, fresh enough that the wood still bled. He whispered the name he hadn't yet dared to say aloud, Marcus Venn, and though no one was there, a whisper seemed to answer from the dark, repeating his own words back to him. Dr. Leah Monroe watched Hale pace her office, his movements restless, his eyes clouded with exhaustion. She'd studied killers for years, but what she saw in Hale unsettled her, the same fixation, the same hunger for understanding that consumed the people she analyzed. "You're not chasing him anymore," she said softly. "You're tracing yourself." Hale stopped, his reflection caught in her framed degree on the wall, split between two panes of glass. "Maybe that's the only way to find him," he murmured. She wanted to argue, but something in his voice carried the kind of conviction that belonged to either prophets or broken men. Later that night, Hale sat in his car outside the river docks. The cassette recorder balanced on the passenger seat. He pressed play again. The voice returned low, composed, articulate. "Ryan," it said, "you're so close." Each word felt measured, rehearsed. Hale's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The rain hammered harder, drowning everything except that voice, which sounded almost amused. He rewound it, replayed it, searching for breath patterns, background hums, anything human. But what chilled him wasn't what he heard. It was what he didn't. The pauses, too perfect. The rhythm of 3 beats, a pause, 3 again. The killer was mimicking his heartbeat. Captain Ward called him into her office the next morning, her expression carved from fatigue and worry. She'd seen this before, the obsession that turns good men into ghosts. "You're crossing lines, Ryan," she said, voice low but firm. "We follow leads, not instincts." Hale said nothing, only stared at the photo pinned behind her. Their old team smiling under summer light. 2 of them were gone now, victims of their own hunts. "You think this is about instincts?" he asked quietly. "It's about finishing what they started." Ward's shoulders sagged. "Then tell me when it's over, what will be left of you?" That night, Hale returned to the factory alone. He followed the trail deeper, until he reached a small room lined with shattered mirrors. The air reeked of rust and mildew, but the wall seat shard reflected him from a dozen angles, fractured and multiplied. In the center sat a single chair, a tape recorder resting on it, still running. He pressed play. Marcus Venn's voice filled the room, calm, intimate. "You're not hunting me, Ryan. You're becoming me." The sound looped, echoing from mirror to mirror, until it became a chorus of his own undoing. Hale raised his gun, but the reflection in front of him smiled first. The morning fog over the river was thick enough to drown sound. Hale stood on the muddy bank, eyes fixed on a plastic bag snagged against the reeds. Inside, a cassette wrapped in lace. The symbol was carved into the tape's casing itself, etched so deep it had split the plastic. He turned it over, and his own name was scratched into the back. His pulse surged as he felt the weight of it in his palm. Not just evidence, an invitation. He knelt by the water, the reflection of the rising sun bleeding red across the current, and whispered to the silence, "Where are you taking me?" The wind answered by carrying the smell of iron and decay. Somewhere nearby, a crow screamed once, then fell silent. Dr. Monroe slid a thin file across her desk. "You asked for his early records," she said. Hale hesitated before opening it. Inside, childhood drawings, medical notes, institutional reports. The handwriting matched the killer's messages perfectly. "Then was raised here," she explained, tapping the folder. "But look closer." Under one note was a second Namerian Hale, scribbled in faded ink, listed as a resident of the same facility. Hale's throat went dry. He hadn't seen his own childhood records since his parents' accident. "How is that possible?" he whispered. Leah's face paled. "Because he remembers you. That night, Hale drove out to the ruins of St. Elias Children's Ward, the place listed in both files. The building was nothing more than rotted wood and whispers now, but stepping through the doors was like walking into the marrow of his own nightmares. His flashlight traced faded murals of smiling suns and paper angels peeling from damp walls. Then he saw it, the spiral, carved into a bed frame, initials beneath it, MVRH. He touched it with trembling fingers. 2 boys, long ago, bound by something neither understood. Behind him, a floorboard creaked. He turned, gun raised, but found only the echo of his own breath. At 3:03 a.m., the phone rang. Hale answered without thinking. Static filled his ear, then a familiar voice spoke. Calm, articulate patient. You found it? Marcus Venn said. I knew you would. You've always followed the rhythm. Hale's knuckles whitened around the receiver. What do you want? He hissed. To finish the song. Venn replied. We started it together. Remember? Then the line clicked dead. Hale stared at the silent receiver, realizing that Venn wasn't calling from hiding. The call was routed from inside the city's evidence archive. The killer was already within the walls. Hale broke into the evidence archive just before dawn. Rows of boxes towered above him, thousands of unsolved lives stacked in silence. He found the one labeled St. Elias Fire, 1983. Inside, scorched documents, melted nameplates, a charred toy car. One photo, half-burned, showed 2 children standing in front of the war dome, clearly Venn, the other unmistakably Hale. They had survived the same fight, but only one remembered. As dawn light seeped through the barred windows, Hale felt the truth crush. The killer hadn't chosen him as prey. He had chosen him as kin. The precinct slept, but Hale didn't. He sat in the archive room, surrounded by open boxes and ghosts of paper. The burned photo lay before him, now joined by new files had stolen from the city records. There was again his name tied to the St. Elias Fire investigation. The report described 2 boys found unconscious near the East Wing, both admitted under false names to separate shelters. One of them later disappeared. Marcus Venn. The other became Ryan Hale. His mind reeled. Had they both survived the same fire, or had one never truly escaped it? As he leaned back, the overhead light flickered. In that strobe of failing electricity, he thought he saw another figure standing across the room. But when the light steadied, it was gone. Dr. Monroe's voice trembled as she read through the final sealed record. Ryan, this isn't just his case file, she whispered. It's yours. You were both part of the same experimental trauma study, same doctor, same ward. Hale stood frozen, eyes hollow. Impossible, he murmured. But deep down, the puzzle pieces were already falling into place. The nightmares, the rhythms, the shared symbol, they weren't messages. They were memories. Venn isn't reaching out to you, Leah said softly. He's trying to wake you up. Hale turned toward the window. His reflection fractured across the glass, 2 faces blending into one. Hale returned to his apartment and pulled every cassette Venn had sent him. He laid them across the floor in order, each labeled with cryptic dates. When he played them sequentially, the voices formed a conversation on that only made sense if both speakers were the same man. Static merged into whispers, then into words that finished each other. In the last tape, Venn said, we both heard the same lullaby in that fire. Only one of us forgot the words. Hale listened in silence, realizing he wasn't chasing a killer anymore. He was chasing the missing half of himself, the part that never left that burning ward. The message came at midnight. An address scrawled in ink across the inside of Hale's apartment door. No note, no explanation. Just the words, come finish it. He followed it to the riverfront factory, same place as before, though it felt different now, less a location than a memory returning to form. The air inside trembled with anticipation, each sound too clear, too rehearsed. You wanted to find me. A voice called from the dark. Ven stepped from the shadows, calm, eyes steady. You already did. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Ven smiled, a mirror image of Hale's own weary grin. It's time to remember which one of us made it out. They stood face to face, two lives that had diverged in the same moment of fire. You think I killed them, Ven said quietly. But I only finished what they started. They made us two halves of one story. Hale raised his gun, though his hands shook. You killed innocent people, Ven nodded. To make you remember, the words hit harder than bullets. Hale felt something collapse inside him, a flood of buried memories breaking free. He saw the flames, the screaming, the two boys holding hands as the ceiling fell. One name whispered through smoke. Ryan. Or was it Marcus? He lowered the gun, unsure anymore which name was his. Hugh. The air inside the factory thickened as Hale's flashlight dimmed. Sparks rained from a live wire, hissing against the damp floor. Ven stepped closer, voice calm, almost tender. You were the one they chose to save, he said. They left me in the flames, but the fire didn't take me, Ryan, it made me. Hale's mind reeled as flashes of memory surged. Two boys in matching hospital gowns, doctors shouting, the ceiling collapsing. He remembered reaching for a hand and letting go. I didn't know, Hale whispered. You did, Ven replied. That's why you became me. The realization landed like ash in his chest. The killer wasn't his opposite. He was his unfinished self. In his mind, Hale was back there again the night of the fire. The corridor stretched endlessly, red with flame and screaming metal. He saw the younger boy Ven trapped behind fallen beams, reaching out. Smoke filled his lungs, blinding him, deafening him. Help me, Ven had cried, but he ran until the heat became silence. Now, standing in the ruins of another inferno, he could hear that voice again, echoing from every shadow. You left me, it said. Hale fell to his knees, clutching his head, the truth clawing its way through his skull. I didn't mean to, he sobbed. But in the flickering dark, the boy's hand still reached through the flames, waiting for him to finish the choice he never made. Back in the present, Ven watched Hale struggle to breathe. You finally remember, he said softly. You chose yourself. Hale rose unsteadily, tears and sweat tracing identical paths down his face. Then why kill them? Ven tilted his head, almost curious. Because you needed them gone. The victims, the symbols, they were all reminders. Pieces of the night you refused to face. I was only ever giving them back to you. Hale's voice cracked. You're lying. But Ven only smiled. A tired, knowing smile that mirrored Hale's perfectly. No, I'm you telling the truth for once. The words echoed through the vast hall like a verdict. The room shook as the first beam fell, sending sparks across the floor. Ven stepped closer, unafraid. You have to end it, Ryan. That's what you came for. Hale raised his gun again, eyes wet and unfocused. If I do this, he said, voice breaking, then who's left? Ven smiled almost gently. Exactly. The fire roared louder, swallowing the walls. The moment stretched into eternity, souls sharing one breath, one heartbeat. Then, a single gunshot split the noise. Silence followed, heavy and complete. The flames reflected off Hale's trembling hand as the gun slipped free. In the echo of that shot, someone finally let go. Dawn broke over the river as smoke curled from the ruined factory. Hale sat on the embankment, face blackened with soot, gun resting beside him. Fire crews worked behind him, shouting through the haze, but their voices felt distant. He watched the sunrise spill across the water, red turning to gold, and for the first time in years, he didn't hear the heartbeat in his head. The case file would close with one name, a Marcus Ven deceased, but Hale knew better. Some fires don't end. They just change form. He looked down at his reflection in the water. For a moment, another face looked back, smiling faintly. Then the ripples erased it, leaving only him and the silence he'd earned. White walls, white sheets, white light. The world felt sterilized, stripped of texture. Hale sat in the hospital bed, arm in a sling, IV dripping beside him. The doctors said he was lucky. The captain said he was brave, but the silence in his head felt heavier than any wound. Outside the window, the city moved on indifferent. Alive. A nurse left his discharge papers on the tray, and he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the metal eyes, tired, calm, unfamiliar. For the first time, there was no heartbeat echo, no voice whispering back. Just breath. He wondered if that peace meant freedom or vacancy. Captain Ward arrived late that evening, trenchcoat still damp from rain. She stood by his bed without speaking for a long while. "They found him," she said finally. "What's left of him anyway?" Hale nodded. "Then, yes, the case is closed." But she hesitated before leaving, her eyes softening. "Ryan, you did what you had to do." He looked at her then, voice barely audible. "Did I?" She wanted to answer but couldn't. Instead, she placed his badge on the bedside table and turned away. When the door closed, the silence felt heavier than before, like something unfinished waiting to be spoken. Weeks later, Hale returned home. The city was colder, or maybe he was. The apartment smelled of rain-soaked wood and old smoke. He unpacked his service weapon, placed it in a drawer, and stared at the wall where the caseboard used to hang. Only faint pinholes were made a constellation of endings. On the table sat the last cassette. He hadn't played it yet. Maybe he didn't need to. But his hand hovered over it anyway, as if drawn by muscle memory. He pressed play. The tape spun in silence for a full minute, before a voice whispered, "Still here?" It wasn't Ven's voice. It was his own. Dr. Monroe reviewed her notes. The final session transcript spread before her. Patient displays increasing detachment. No auditory recurrence. Persistent dream recall. She underlined one phrase, resembles post-traumatic dissociation. Yet something in her handwriting trembled. She glanced at the small envelope on her desk delivered anonymously that morning. Inside, a single photo, her own office window taken from across the street. No message, just the spiral symbol etched faintly in the corner. She looked out that same window now, searching the street below. Nothing but rain. But she closed the blinds anyway. A month later, Hale sat once more in his car under a flickering streetlight. The city was the same endless rain, distant sirens, but he was different now. Or so he wanted to believe. The radio crackled to life with a dispatch. Homicide. Warehouse district. Victim marked. Hale hesitated, fingers resting on the ignition. He exhaled slowly, the smoke curling like memory. Then, with a faint smile, tired, resigned, he turned the key. The engine roared awake. Outside, thunder rolled through the sky like something remembering itself. The night swallowed him once more, and for a heartbeat, the rain began to sound like applause. The warehouse smelled of rust, rain, and something older like memory, returning to form. Hale stepped inside, the sound of dripping water counting the seconds between heartbeats. The walls were bare except for a single mark drawn in chalk near the center. The spiral smaller this time, uneven. A copycat, perhaps, or maybe not. His flashlight beam wavered over the floor, no body, just footprints leading into shadow. Then, from somewhere deep within, a whisper, a familiar rhythm of breath. He called out, "Marcus." No answer, only the echo repeating his name back to him in perfect cadence, as if the darkness itself remembered him. At the far end, he found a wall covered with old security mirrors, warped and clouded. His flashlight caught them in sequence, each reflection a slightly different version of himself. Older, younger, bruised, smiling. He moved closer, transfixed. Then one of the reflections blinked when he didn't. "You're still here?" said a voice that wasn't his own. Hale's breath froze. "You can't kill a reflection," it continued. The mirrors trembled, rippling like disturbed water. He stepped back, shaking his head. "You're gone," he whispered. The glass laughed softly. "No, Ryan. We're just finally together." The mirrors shattered all at once. Later, Hale sat in his car, rain pouring down, the recorder running. His voice was calm now, almost detached. "Detective Ryan Hale, final report," he said quietly. "Subject, Marcus Venn. Case concluded. Cause of death. Conflation of memory." He hesitated, staring at the mic. There was no killer. There was only what the fire left behind. The rain tapped harder, the rhythm returning. He smiled faintly. "If anyone hears this, don't chase ghosts. They'll always run faster." He clicked the recorder off, letting the silence swell until it became almost music. Dr. Monroe dreamt of the ward that night. The hallways were whole again, children's laughter echoing softly. At the end of the corridor stood two boys, holding hands, watching her. One smiled. The other whispered something she couldn't hear. When she tried to move closer, firelight bloomed between them, consuming everything in golden shadow. She awoke in tears, unsure which boy she had seen last, the innocent or the one who survived. On her desk, the old case file lay open to a page she didn't remember writing. Some wounds heal into mirrors. The storm passed by morning. Hale stood by the river once more, the same place where the first clue had surfaced months ago. The water was calm now, reflecting the pale sky like unbroken glass. He tossed the recorder into the river and watched it sink, bubbles rising briefly before vanishing. A breeze stirred, carrying the faint scent of smoke or memory. He closed his eyes, whispering, "We're done." When he looked again, the reflection staring back at him smiled faintly before dissolving into ripples. Somewhere far away, a child's laughter echoed, and then, mercifully, silence.